Hello, my friends, and welcome back. In this section, we're going to build this amazing app called the chat application. This application contains many concepts. I want from you to focus with me in order to master Firebase concepts and MVVM. This application contains many activities. At first, we have this login activity, and we'll learn about anonymous login and authentication system in Firebase. Then it will be directing you to the groups activity. This activity will display the groups available for chatting in Firebase. So we have two groups, family and university, and inside the family, there are a lot of messages. You can create new chat groups here by adding a new chat group. I'll name it as friends, create chat group, and you can see it will be added directly to Firebase console. Also, if you select the group, the app will direct you to the chat activity, and inside this chat activity, it will display your messages in purple and the other messages in gray. Let me test. Send. You can see I'm sending it and it's displaying the purple color. If I select another device, you can see that's in purple because in this device, I'm not the owner of these messages. So we're going to implement these concepts. We're going to learn these amazing concepts in a professional application following the MVVM architecture, model, view, view model. So are you ready to build this amazing app? Yes, I think so. Let's start building this amazing app. While building our application, we're going to follow the MVVM architecture. MVVM, which stands for Model View View Model, is an architectural pattern commonly used in Android app development to separate the concerns of the user interface and business logic. We have three layers: model, view, and view model. The view is responsible for rendering the user interface and presenting data to the user. In Android, the view is typically implemented using XML layout files and widgets like text views, image views, and etc. This layer observes the view model and doesn't contain any kind of application logic. The view model is an intermediary between the view and the model. It contains the presentation logic and transforms the data from the model into a format that can be easily displayed by the view. In Android, the view model is typically implemented as a class that provides data to the view and handles user interactions. It also retains data across configuration changes, for example, screen rotations, using the Android view model architecture component. The model layer represents the data and business logic of the application. It encapsulates the data and operations that are performed on that data. In Android, the model often consists of data sources such as databases, web services, or repositories that manage data retrieval and storage. We followed MVVM architecture in the previous sections to build many applications and fetching the data from different data sources. So for example, if you go back to the Contacts Manager application, we fetched the data from local data source, which is the room database. Also, we'll build two applications using the remote data source. The first one is the movie app that fetches the data from the TMDB API and display a list of popular movies in our application. The second app that follows the MVVM architecture and using the remote data source is the quiz app that fetches the data from localhost from our database, MySQL database, and display the questions to the user. In this application, we're going to introduce a new concept, which is the Firebase. So we're going to follow the MVVM architecture while fetching the data from Firebase, while authenticating users with Firebase authentication, and while fetching the messages and data from the Firebase real-time database. So are you excited? I am very excited. So let's move to Android Studio. In this video, we're going to create our new project and link it with the Firebase console and add the required dependencies. Open Android Studio, select New Project, empty views activities, and I'll name it as chat app. Select Java, click finish. Then open your browser, go to firebase.google.com and sign in. Then click on Go to Console button. Add a project, and here enter your project name. I'll name it as What's Up Kotlin. Continue. Default account for Firebase. Create project. Click continue. And the first step is to add Firebase to our application. We select Android here, Android package name. We need to get the package name from our application. Copy this, paste it here. The nickname is chat app. And I'll skip this because I don't need to use Google sign-in or phone number support in authentication. Click on download google-services.json button. And after you download this file, make sure that the naming here is exactly google-services.json. So I will remove number 1. And many developers have errors in this file. Just copy it. And let's go back to Android Studio, select project, chat app, and inside the app folder, I'll paste this file. Make sure again, google-services.json. Click OK, and here we go. Click next. Now we need to add the dependencies. I'll copy this line and add it to the Gradle at the project level. Go back to Android. This is the project level. And here I need to paste Google-services. Then I need to select Java, copy this and go to the module or app level. So select this and paste the plugin here. Then I need to add the Firebase BOM, the platform dependency, and you can use Firebase Analytics. There is a very important note here when using the BOM, Firebase BOM. Don't specify versions in Firebase dependencies. So you can see here I included the Firebase Analytics without specifying the version because I included the BOM. Click next, and here we go. We added Firebase to our application. Now let's add the dependencies, the required dependencies of Firebase that we'll use in our application. Back to the console, and here I'll start with authentication. Click on authentication, or you can go to build and choose authentication, get started. And in the previous videos, while working with the journal app, I used an email password authentication. I'll use the anonymous authentication here in this application. Click on anonymous, enable it, and click on save. So we allow the anonymous. Also, you can add a new provider. You can use Twitter, Apple, Facebook, Yahoo, Google, and many other providers. Then select go to documentations. I need to add a dependency for authentication. Then I need to use Android and get started. Select Java and copy this dependency. Go back to your Android Studio and add this dependency for Firebase authentication. Then I need to use the Firebase real-time database dependency. Again, I need to select real-time database and select Android, get started, copy this dependency, go back to Android Studio and paste it here. Make sure that it is not for Kotlin because we're working with Java. So copy it. Sync now. And since I'm going to use the data binding library, I'll enable it inside Android. So here I'll add build features and I need to enable data binding equals to true. Sync now. And our project is ready. The last step is to add the internet permission in the manifest. So open manifest, add users permission, and select internet. Then our project is ready. So let's start building our amazing application. I'm going to use the anonymous authentication that allows users to use your app or access certain features without requiring them to sign up or log in with a traditional username and password. Instead, it provides them with a temporary anonymous account that Firebase manages. And you can get a list of users if you select the users tab. Back to our project. I'll create a new package and I'll name it as repository. And inside this repository, I'll create a new Java class and I'll name it as repository. In authentication, since I'm not going to use a traditional username and password sign up or login methods, I don't need to use model classes. So for that, I directly use the repository. The repository acts as a bridge between the view model and the data sources, such as databases, network services, and local storage. The repository is responsible for abstracting the data sources and providing a clean and consistent API for the view model to access and manage the data. I'll create a new method called Firebase Anonymous Authentication. And this method took into the parameter a context object. I'll use this context object in the intents. Alt plus enter to import this context. And inside this method, I'll start with Firebase auth dot get instance dot sign in. This line of code is used to initiate anonymous authentication in an Android application using Firebase authentication. Firebase auth.getInstance. This part initializes the Firebase authentication system for your Android app. It gets an instance of the Firebase auth class, which is the entry point of all Firebase authentication operations in your app. Sign in anonymously. This is a method provided by Firebase authentication. When called, it attempts to sign in the user. Anonymous authentication generates a temporary and unauthenticated account for the user. This can be useful for allowing users to access some basic features of your app without requiring them to create a full account. It's typically used in scenarios where you want to personalize the user experience but don't need the user to provide any personal information. Also, I intended to use this type of authentication because we learned before how to use password and email authentication in the journal app. And in this app, I'm going to use a different way, which is anonymous authentication. If you want, you can use any other authentication system. After calling sign in anonymously method, you can handle the result in a callback or using asynchronous methods to check if the sign in was successful, and if needed, link the anonymous account to a permanent account or perform other actions. I'll start with add incomplete listener. Pass a new incomplete listener in order to override the incomplete method. So this method will be called when the authentication is successful. Let's start. This is the task. If task is successful, we need to direct the user to another activity. So intent I equals to new intent. And here I need to use the context object that I passed as a parameter. And I'll create a new activity called groups activity. I.add flags, intent.flag new task, and context.start activity I. This line of code and the flag activity new task indicates that a new task should be created for the activity that is being started. This means that the new activity will be started in a new task rather than within the same task backstack as the calling activity. And this line of code prevents many errors. You should use it when calling intents and when moving from one activity to another outside the activity. So this repository is outside the main activity. I'm not moving from this main activity to the groups activity. I'm moving from the main activity to the groups activity in the repository. So I need to use this line of code. And I use the context object to start the activity and launches the new activity in a new task. I'll create this new activity. So inside a new package, I'll name it as views. I'll create a new activity, new empty views activity, and I'll name it as groups activity, Java, and click finish. Close it for later on and import this groups activity class. Welcome back. In this video, we'll implement the sign out functionality and get the current user ID. I'll start by creating a new method named as get current user ID. This will return Firebase auth.getInstance.getUID. As said before, Firebase auth.getInstance, this part initializes the Firebase authentication system and returns an instance of Firebase auth class, which is the entry point for all Firebase authentication operations in your Android app. Get UID. This method returns the UID of the current authenticated user. The UID is the unique identifier assigned by Firebase authentication for each user when they sign up or authenticate in your app. And to implement the sign out functionality, we need to create another method. I'll make it as public and I'll name it as sign out. This method will call again Firebase auth.getInstance.signout method. Sign out method is called when the Firebase authentication instance logs out the currently authenticated user and terminating their session. By the way, we can move all these codes to a new class called Firebase Manager in order to make the repository more clean. But since there's no complex codes to manage here in the repository, I'll keep them. So we have Firebase anonymous authentication, get current user ID, and sign out methods for the authentication. The view model is a crucial component responsible for managing the presentation logic and UI related data. It acts as a bridge between the view, typically an activity or fragment, and the model, which represents the data and business logic of the application. Android view model is designed to be aware of Android lifecycle, which means it can survive configuration changes, for example, screen rotations, and be automatically cleaned up when the associated UI component, example the activity, is destroyed. This ensures that data is retained and reconnected to the UI as needed. Let's move to Android Studio and start creating our Android view model. Create a new package. I'll name it as view model, and inside this package I'll create a new Java class and I'll name it as my view model. This class will extend from Android view model. This is a specialized type of view models that is designed to work with Android specific components and to be aware of Android application context. By extending Android view model, you can take advantage of Android view model's lifecycle awareness and the application context, which is useful in situations when you need to perform tasks that are tied to the application's global context. This can particularly helpful when working with system services, resources, or preferences that require access to the application context. And in this case, I need to work with the context. If we go back to the repository, I need to pass a context object here in the parameter if I need to call the Firebase anonymous authentication. So here I need to use the Android view model to access the context and pass it as an argument for the Firebase anonymous authentication method in the repository when calling it. I'll create a repository instance and here Alt plus enter to create the constructor, and I need to initialize the repository equals to new repository. Then I need to specify the methods that the view can access through the view model. If I go back to the repository, I have 3 methods. I need to access them and call them from the view model. At first, I'll start with the sign up anonymous user. So public void sign up anonymous user. And here I need to create an object of context. C equals to this dot get application context. This is how we get the context, and this is why we use the Android view model and not using the view model that it's provided. And by the way, Android view model is a child of view model. User repository or repository dot Firebase anonymous authentication. I need to pass an object here of type context. You can see I'm calling the Firebase anonymous authentication method correctly and passing the context object. So for that, I used the Android view model. Then I need to call the two methods, get current user ID, and I need to return user or repository dot get current user ID. The third method, sign out. I need to call repository dot sign out method. So this is how we create the view model in Android. Welcome back. We finished the authentication system for the Firebase. We done with the repository and we created our view model. Now let's move to create the view. Open Android Studio, delete the main activity, and I'll create a new activity called login inside the views package. New empty views activity, and here login activity. Click finish. Go to the manifest and change the main activity to login activity, which is the launcher, and delete this. Then move to the activity underscore login. I'll design the layout. I'll include it inside the layout tag since I'm going to use the data binding. So here, layout, and cut this, move it down, and remove these namespaces to the layout. Then I'll copy a wallpaper I prepared and paste it in the drawable folder. Make sure all letters are small and .gpg. This is my wallpaper, and use Android background attribute to set the wallpaper. And here we go. This is our wallpaper and this is our login activity. Inside this constraint layout, I'll include two views, one text view and one button. So I'll start with the text view. And add the constraints, drag and drop it here, constraints, and this is good. I'll make the gravity to center and it's better now. Also, we need to create a button, drag and drop it, invert the constraints, and this is good. Then I'll go up and create a data variable. Since I'm going to use the data binding, I need to link and handle the click event of this button with the my view model and sign up anonymous user method. Trigger this method when the user clicks on this button. So for that, I'll create a new variable. I'll name it as vModel and it's of type view model. Scroll down, add the onClick, sign up anonymous user. And we need to add this lambda that tells Android Studio to trigger the sign up anonymous user method in the view model when the user clicks on this button. Okay, save it. Let's move to the login activity. And here I'll create an instance of my view model. And to initialize view models in Android, we need to start using the view model provider. View model equals to new view model provider. I'll pass this and .get, and I need to get my view model .class. This part creates a view model provider instance. This parameter is typically an Android component like an activity or fragment, and in this case the login activity that the view model is associated with. The view model provider is responsible for creating and managing view model instances. Get method, this part retrieves an instance of the view model class you specify. In this case, my view model. The view model provider will create a new instance of my view model if one, it doesn't exist for the associated component, or it will return the existing instance if it already exists. This helps ensure that you have a single view model instance associated with a specific component, for example, an activity during its life cycle. Activity login binding equals to data binding util.setContentView. I'll pass this and r.layout.activity.login. Then I need to link this activity login binding with the view model by setting view model. I am passing this variable view model to the variable in the data in the layout. Save and run. And here we go. This is our app. Let's test the anonymous login. And here we go. We are directed to the groups activity. But let's move to the Firebase console and see if there is any login. So go to Firebase console, select authentication and select users. And here we go. This is our first anonymous user created at this date. And the user ID is this. So congratulations, guys. We succeeded in implementing the anonymous authentication with Firebase. Welcome back. We succeeded in adding the Firebase authentication to our application. Now let's move to the groups activity and start fetching and displaying all the groups, all the chatting groups available in the Firebase real-time database and display them to the user so the user can select one of these groups and display the messages and start chatting with the members of this group. Of course, I'll follow the MVVM architecture. So again, I'll create a Firebase logic, but this time we need to create model classes to fetch the Firebase real-time database data and records and the repository, then moving to the view model and later on to the view. So in this video, I'll create the model classes for our chatting groups. For that, I'll create a new package here. I'll name it as model. And inside this model, I'll create a new Java class and I'll name it as chat group. This chat group is a model class that contains only one attribute, which is the group name. So I'll create string group name. I'll create the constructor and I'll create the getters and setters. This is very simple. This is our chat group. I need to fetch only the chat group name. The second step is to move to the repository and write the code that allow us to get the chat groups available from Firebase real-time database. So for that, I'll create a mutable live data list of chat group and I'll name it as mutable live data. Mutable live data is a class provided by Android architecture components that is used to hold and observe data changes. It's immutable because you can change the data it holds over time. A list of chat group specifies the type of data that mutable live data will hold. In this case, it's generic type and it's a list of chat group objects. I'll name it as chat group mutable live data. I'll create Firebase database instance, database reference equals to reference. Then I need to initialize these variables in the constructor. So Alt plus insert to create constructor and select none. I needed an empty constructor. And here I need to initialize the chat group mutable live data equals to mutable live data. Firebase database equals to Firebase database dot get instance and reference equals to database dot get reference. Move down. These are the codes for the authentication. So I'll mark it as authentication. And here, this is for getting the chat groups available from Firebase real-time database. I'll create a getter for this mutable live data called chat group. Alt plus insert to create a getter for chat group mutable live data. And inside this getter, I need to write the code to fetch all the data from Firebase into recycler view that displays all the groups available for chatting. I want from you to focus with. The first step is to create a list of chat group. This is the type that it is passed among the mutable live data generic type. I'll name it as groups list equals to new array list. I need to fetch the data from Firebase and add them to the mutable live data and this groups list. So for that, I need to create database reference dot add value event listener, new value event listener, and I'll override two methods, on data change and on cancel. A value event listener is used to listen for changes in data at a specific database reference in Firebase. So this is the reference to a specific location in the Firebase real-time database. You'll attach a value event listener to this reference to listen for changes in the data located at that path. And add value event listener. This is a method provided by Firebase's real-time database that allows you to attach a listener to a database reference. This listener will be triggered when data at that reference changes. The method takes an instance of value event listener as a parameter, and we have a new value event listener. This is an anonymous inner class or an anonymous class that implements the value event listener interface. Inside the curly braces, you should override two methods, the on data change and on canceled methods inside anonymous class to define the behavior when data changes or when an error occurs during the retrieval of data from Firebase real-time database. In onDataChange method, you can access and process the data received from the specified database reference, and in the onCanceled method, you can handle any errors that might occur during the data retrieval. Group list. This is mandatory to prevent any duplication of received data from Firebase. Then I need to start by using the for each loop data snapshot, and we talked about the snapshot and the data snapshots in the previous videos, but don't worry, I'll make a quick recap. Snapshots.get children. I need to get the children. A data snapshot represents a specific location in the Firebase database and can contain data or child data. GetChildren method is a method of data snapshot class that returns an iterable of all the immediate children of the current snapshot. The for each loop iterates through each child of snapshot. Inside the loop, data snapshot represents each child data one by one. Then I'll create an object from chat group, name it as group equals to new chat group, and here I'll pass data snapshot dot get key. Then add this group to the groups list array list. So data snapshot is the instance of data snapshot class representing a specific location in your Firebase database, and .getKey method is a method provided by data snapshot class. When you called on the data snapshot object, it returns the key associated with the data at the location in the database. So I'm getting the keys associated with that data snapshot at this specific position. Think about the keys as nodes in Firebase. Then we need to post the value to the chat group mutable live data. So chat group mutable live data dot post value groups list. I need to add this group list to the mutable live data. I need to return the chat group mutable live data. The third step is to move to my view model and create a new method that calls the repository getChat group mutable live data method. So for that, I need to create a new method here. Its returning type is similar to that of repository getMutable live data chat group, and I'll name it as getGroupList. This will call the repository.getChatGroup mutable live data method. You should specify all the methods here in the MyView model that are linked with the repository. The fourth step is to move to the view layer. So inside the views, I'll create a new package and I'll name it as adapters. Inside this adapter, I'll create adapter classes for the recycler views. But at first, I'll create a new layout, a resource file. I'll name it as item card. This represents a template for every group inside the recycler view. So I'll go to split mode. Then inside this, I'll add the layout tag since I'm going to use data binding with this layout. Then I'll create a variable, data variable of type chat group. Then I need to scroll down, and here I'll change this constraint layout to card view. So Android x.cardview.widget.cardview. And inside this card view, I'll create a constraint layout. And inside this constraint layout, I'll create two views, one of type image view, and the second is of type text view. You can download the source code from the resources folder under each section. So if you want to skip this layout, you can download this layout file from the resources folder. And I'll copy this image to the drawable folder. This is just an icon for the group. Here I'll specify it as drawable. Then the last thing I need to create is the text view. And here we go. This is our layout for the card items, one image view and one text view inside a card layout. In this video, we'll create the adapter class that extends from recycler view.adapter class, allowing us to display this custom layout. So inside the views package, we created this adapters package, and inside this adapters package, I'll create a new Java class and I'll name it as group adapter. This class will extend from a recycler view.adapter class, and here I need to pass the view holder as a generic type. So for that, I'll create a new public class named as group view holder, extends from recycler view.viewholder class. So I need to pass the view holder here, group adapter.group view holder. The main purpose of the view holder is to cache references to the individual views within an item layout of the recycler view list or grid. Here, I need to start by creating an instance from item card binding. I name it as item card binding, and I need to create a constructor having the item card binding. I remove this view from it, and inside it, I need to pass the data binding.get root. In this way, we are telling this adapter that our layout is using the data binding library. And we talked about this concept in the previous sections while using the recycler view with data binding. So please go back to the previous sections if you have any doubt about how to use data binding with recycler view. But don't worry, in this application, we'll use it twice. So we're going to use this recycler view or the recycler view with data bind. Here I need to handle the click events on recycler view items. So item card binding dot get root dot set on click listener. Here I need to pass an anonymous view on click listener interface. I need to get the clicked item position. So for that, int position equals to get adapter position. Later on in this section and in the next videos, I'll come back to here to handle the click events on the clicked item position of the recycler view card. So I'll leave it now. I'll go up. So this is our group view holder. First, I need to create an array list of type chat group, and I'll name it as groups array list. Alt plus enter to import the class of array list. And here I need to create a constructor having this array list. Then when extending recyclerView.adapter class, I need to implement 3 methods: onCreateViewHolder, onBindViewHolder, and getItemCount. Click OK, and here we go. The first method initializes the view holder and inflates the item layout. So in onCreateViewHolder method, I need to create an instance of item card binding equals to data binding util dot inflate, and here I need to pass 4 parameters. The first one is the layout inflator dot from parent dot get context. The second one is r.layout and the item card that we created before, parent and false. Data binding util.inflate. This method is used to inflate a layout resource and create a binding object for that layout. Layout inflator.from method. It obtains a layout inflator from the context of the parent view. The layout inflator is used to inflate the layout resource. Inflate equals to display. Our layout item card. This is the ID of the resource layout you want to inflate or you want to display. And in this case, item underscore card that we created before. Parent. This is the parameter specified that the inflated layout will be attached to. It's commonly used to determine the context for inflation and the view's parent. False. The last parameter, false, indicates whether the inflated layout should be attached to the parent view immediately, and in this case it's set to false to avoid attaching it to immediately since we are using our custom adapter. Then I need to return new group view holder and passing the binding object. Let's move to the onBindViewHolder. On BindViewHolder, this method binds data to an existing view holder. It populates the views in the view holder with data from dataset. So I'll start by creating a chat group. Current user equals to groups ArrayList.get, and here I have 2 parameters, one of type group view holder and one of type position. I need to pass and get the current group and populate it with the holder. So item card binding dot set user current user, and get item count. This is the last method. This returns how many items in the recycler view or the list to be displayed. I need to return groups array list dot size. So here we go. This is our group adapter. Now let's move to the groups activity and display all the groups in the Firebase. Now let's move to the groups activity and get all the groups available in Firebase real-time database. For that, open activity underscore group.xml file, and inside this file, I'll add the layout tag because I'm going to use data binding. Then move these namespaces to the layout tag, and inside this constraint layout, I'll create a recycler view and an image view. image view just for displaying an image as a header for this activity. Image view. And I'll move to the desktop and copy this header. You can download all the resources, all the source codes, all the files and the assets from the resources folder under this section. Paste it here. Make sure all the letters are small letters. Click OK. And then specify this drawable. Here we go. Specify its height to 180. It's good. And I'll infer the constraints. Then I need to add the recycler view. 0dp, 0dp, id, recycler view. And here we go. This is our layout. Now let's move to the groups activity and initialize some variables. Let's move down to the onCreate method and initialize these variables. Binding equals to data binding util dot set content view to this and r.layout dot activity groups. Then I need to define the view model. As we learned before, my view model equals to new my view model, and here I need to use view model provider. This get passing the my view model dot class. So we use view model provider to get an instance of view models, and get method will tell the view model provider what is the type of view models you need to create. And in this application, I created this my view model that acts as Android view model. Back to the groups activity, I need to initialize the recycler view with data binding. Now I want from you to focus with me because it's a very important concept and part of this activity. If we go back to the view model, we need to listen for changes in the get chat group mutable live data. But this method returns mutable live data object. And in order to listen to all the changes in the mutable live data, we need to use observers. So back to the groups activity, we need to set up an observer to listen for changes in a live data object associated with the Android view model. I'll start with my view model dot get group list. I'm calling this method dot observe. When dealing with mutable live data, we need to use observe method. Here I'll pass the first parameter is this, and the second parameter is new observer list. This code sets up an observer for the live data object. The observer listens for changes in the data and defines what to do when data changes. And on data changed method is overridden. This is a callback method that gets executed when the data within the live data object changes. It receives the updated data as a parameter. So you can see the chat groups is the updated data. So we need to get benefit of this updated data that it is received, and we need to display it in the recycler view. So for that, I need to create a chat group array list. I'll initialize it here and add all the chats or the chat groups received and the updated list of the chat groups received and add it to the chat group array list. I'll use a function called add all chat groups. Here I am populating the chat group array list with the updated version of the chat groups. Then I need to create a group adapter and initialize it here and pass the updated chat group array list. Recycler view dot set adapter group adapter, and don't miss to use the notify data set change. This is how we use recycler view with data binding. And it's a very important concept. And if you want to practice more about recycler view with data binding, you can review the previous sections. We need to add new groups to our Firebase database. So for that, I'll go to activity_groups.xml and I'll create a new fab, floating action button. So create floating action button, wrap content, ID would be fab, drag and drop it here. Then in further constraints, remove this 16 dp from the right and from the bottom. And I need to add a new vector asset in the drawable folder. So create a new vector asset, and here I'll name it as Android add and search for add. Select this, okay, name it as icon add, click next, click finish. I'll use app src compat to override the background at drawable, and here we go. And I'll change the background color, so I'll use background tint at Android and predefined colors. This is good. Let's move to the repository and create a new group function. This function takes into the parameter a string called group name. And to create and push data to Firebase, it's very simple. I'll use database reference dot child. You can create a root child, or you can remove it and set directly to the root folder and create new groups in the root folder. So I'll use set value, the group name. The third step is to move the my view model and call this repository, create a new chat group function. But wait, from where we need to get the group name? When the user clicks on this fab button, we need to display a dialog, alert dialog, to get the name of the group and pass it to the view model here in this method. And in this method, in turns calls the repository.create a new chat group and inserted it into the Firebase real-time database. So let's move to create this alert dialog. When the user clicks on this fab, we need to display an alert dialog that gets the name of the group that the user wants to create in Firebase real-time database. So for that, I'll create a new layout for the dialog. So dialog underscore layout. Go split mode, and I'll use the data binding. And inside this layout, I'll create one edit text, one text view, and one button. Drag and drop it to here and infer the constraints. Then I need to create an edit text. Drag and drop it below this text view and infer the constraints. Then add a button. Drag and drop it, infer the constraints, and here we go. Now let's move up and change the height of this entire layout to wrap content. Then back to groups activity. I'll create here an alert dialog instance. Import the package of dialog and the class. And here I'll create, under the onCreate method, I'll create a new method called show dialog. I'll initialize the dialog, new dialog, and I'll pass this as the context. Dialog.request window feature, window.feature no title. In Android, dialogs can have a title bar that displays a title or custom title view. By calling request window features and passing feature no title, you are essentially telling the dialog not to display the title bar. Then I need to use the layout inflator to inflate the layout of the dialog, since I created this dialog in a custom layout. So view equals to layout inflator, and I need to import the class of the view inflator dot from this context, and I need to inflate and display r.layout.dialog layout. And the second parameter is the view group. There's nothing to attach to the root, which is null, and the view group is null, since I'm creating it in another view. Since I'm creating a custom dialog layout and I include it in this view object, I need to use chat group dialog.setContentView method and pass the view object to it. I need to initialize some views, the submit button and the edit text. Then I'll handle a click event on this button. So set on click listener, new view on click listener, and I need to get the name of the chat group entered by the user inside this edit text. So string group name equals to edit text.getText.toString. I'll display a toast message at first in order to test my program. Your chat group name. Let me run. Anonymous again, click on the fab. Oops, I didn't add the show method here. So I need to call the show chat group dialog.show method. Run it again. And here we go. This is our dialog. You can enter the chat group name. I name it as family. Click create a group and your chat group is family. Now we need to dismiss this dialog. So here I need to call chat group dialog.dismiss. It's very simple. Now everything is working fine. Now let's create a new repository or the view model here. Create an instance from it. I'll call my view model dot create a new group and I'll pass the group name as a parameter. Let me run and see. Go to the console, select Firebase real-time database and click on create database. Next, start in test mode, enable, and this is our real-time database dashboard. Now, let's move to anonymous login button. Click on this fab, enter a group name. I name it as family. Click create chat group. Make sure you enable your internet connection. Refresh the console. Nothing happened because there is an error maybe in some places. My view model, go to the my view model and I'm calling this create. Let's go to the repository and I'm calling this and everything is working fine. Let me check again. Oh, we have the family value here is set it for the reference. Maybe the error is in the child node. We didn't specify the child node here. I'm setting the value to the whole database. I need to set like this. I need to create child, the group name, and I set the value to group name, or you can put like this empty string. Let's run again. Anonymous login, family, create chat group, and here we go. This is our database reference, and this is the first node. And you can see, by the way, that family card item is added directly to this group's activity. So congratulations, we created the functionality for creating the groups and for displaying the groups that are in the Firebase real-time database. Let me test another one. And here we go. It's working like a charm. Congratulations, guys. We succeeded in getting all the chatting groups in the Firebase real-time database. Now, let's allow the user to enter these chatting groups in order to send and receive messages. For that, I'll create a new chatting activity. I'll select empty views activity and I'll name it as chat activity. Inside the group adapter, we have item card binding.getRoot.setOnClickListener. They are located in the group view holder. And I told you that I'll come back to handle the click events on the selected card. I'll start by creating a chat group. Clicked chat group equals to groups array list dot get position. I'm getting the current click card or the chat group. Intent I equals to new intent, and I'll use v.getContext to get the context object, and I need to direct the user to the chat activity.class. Then I need to put extra the chat name or the chat group name. Group underscore name, this is the key, and the value is chat group. Click chat group dot get group name. V dot get context dot start activity, and I am starting this in. I'm directing the user to the chat activity and passing the group name in order to receive the messages specified for this clicked chat group. And as usual, and as we learned, we'll start with the model, then move to the repository, view model, and then to the views again. I'll create a new model class. I'll name it as chat message. And inside this chat message, I'll include 4 attributes. The first one is the sender ID. String sender ID. The second attribute is the message text. The third one is of type long, which is the time, and a boolean is mine. This for checking if this message and the current message is sent by me or by others. Create a constructor having the first 3. Then I need to check if the sender ID equals to the current user ID. So I'll set the isMine boolean to true. And this will result in distinguishing my messages from the other messages. So sender ID dot equals to Firebase auth dot get instance dot get current user dot get UID. If it is true, then set isMine to true. Of course, I need an empty constructor because I'm using Firebase, and I need to create getters and setters. And inside this model class, I'll create a new method just for converting the time. So convert time. And here I am making the time as a long type. So I'm converting this long to a string. Simple date format object as the f equals to new simple date format, and I need it with HH and minute. So this will format the time in hours and minutes. Date equal to new date object get time. I'm getting the time variable. This is the getter of the time variable. As the f dot set time zone dot get default, and return as the f dot format the date. In this method, I'm converting timestamp into a formatted time string. The resulting string will represent the time in the local time zone according to the hour, minute pattern. We created the chat message model class. Now let's move to the repository and create a function that returns for us immutable live data of list of chat message model class. For that, I'll create mutable live data list of chat message, and I'll name it as messages live data. And let's initialize this message live data equals to new mutable live data in the constructor. Let's scroll down. And I'll create a getter method for this messages live data. I want from you to focus with me now. I'll get the messages, the chat messages, according to the group name. So for that, I need to pass here in the parameters a string called group name. So I'll fetch the chat messages according to the passed parameter, which is the group name. And I'll use this group name in order to detect and specify the database reference. So for that, I'll not use the database reference that we created before. I'll create another reference. So database reference, I'll name it as group reference. Scroll down and back to the get messages live data method. And here group reference equals to database. I'll use the database, Firebase database dot get reference dot child. And here I need to pass the group name. Database is the Firebase database instance, which is obtained from Firebase SDK or library. Get reference. This method is used to get a reference to a location in the Firebase real-time database. It's typically called on database object to create a reference to the root of that database. Child method. This is used to specify the child node or location under the root reference. And the group name is a variable or string representing the name of the child node or location. In the previous examples, when we get the chat group mutable live data, we use the reference. And the reference, if we go back, we can see it represents the root reference. In the chat messages, we don't need the root, we need the group. So for that, I used the child method. And in the same way we've done before with the group chat groups, I'll use the list of messages, chat messages, model class, and I'll name it as messages list. New array list. And inside this list, I'll fetch the data from database, real-time database of the Firebase, and add it to the mutable live data that we created before, which is the messages live data. Okay, I'll use database reference or group reference here, dot add value event listener, new value event listener. And on data change, I need to clear the messages list at first in order to prevent any duplication of data. And I'll use a for each loop. For each data snapshot, data snapshot, and this is the updated data that we received from Firebase, I'll use get children method. So I'm using a for each loop to iterate through a collection of data snapshot objects obtained from snapshot.getChildren. Data snapshot, this is a class typically used in Firebase to represent a snapshot of data at a particular location in the database. And data snapshot, this is a variable that takes on the value of each item in the collection as you iterate through. Snapshot.getChildren method, this part specifies the collection of items over which the loop iterates. Snapshots, it seems to be previously defined variable or object representing a location or snapshot of data in the Firebase real-time database. And getChildren method is a method to retrieve the child snapshots of that location. And inside this for loop, this time we need to get a chat message model class and objects. So here I name it as message equals to data snapshot.get value. Don't need the key, we need the value. And here chat message.class. Data snapshot.get value. This part of code retrieves the data from the data snapshot and attempts to deserialize it into an instance of chat message class. The get value method is a common method provided by Firebase or similar database libraries to retrieve the data as an object of the specified class. Data snapshot, this data snapshot object that contains the specific piece of data within the database. And get value, this part tells the Firebase SDK to attempt to convert the data within the data snapshot into an instance of chat message class. So this is the deserialization process in Firebase. Of course, I need to add to the messages list this message. So I use add method. We created before the mutable live data here, messages live data, and it's of type list of chat message. So for that, I need to update the mutable live data with the latest list of messages. So for that, messages live data dot post value messages list. Of course, I need to return this messages live data here as the returning type of this function is of type mutable live data list of chat message. This is how we get messages live data. We finished with the repository. We created this function that take into parameter a string group name and a returning type mutable live data list of chat message. We need to call this function from the view model. So I'll create a function similar to that of the repository. So here I'll create public mutable live data of list of chat message, get messages live data. And of course, I need to match the returning type and the parameters. And inside this, I need to call return repository dot get messages live data. And here I need to pass the group name as a parameter for this function. So we need to call the repository functions from the view model. So this is our view model. Welcome back. In this video, we'll create some drawable shapes in the drawable folder. And of course, you can download all the source codes from the resources folder under each section and under this section. So I'll create a new drawable resource file. I'll name it as left_node_bg. I'll change it from selector to shape. And here I'll create a solid Android color. I'll use this color and I'll create a stroke width. I'll create a corner and padding. These are attributes for this shape. And as you know, we have a left and right. Right for the messages that I sent. Left is for the messages that the other users sent. I'll create another drawable resource file. I'll name it as right_node_bg. In the same way, I'll copy this and paste it here. I'll change the color 495089 and I'll remove the stroke. This is for the right node. Then I need to copy these drawables. These are purple and gray triangles. Copy them to the drawable folder. You can download them from the resources folder under this section. This is the gray node and this is the purple node. I'll create other two shapes, one for button and one for edit text. So here I'll name it as regular_button. And this is of type shape, solid, color. I'll use this hex code. This is good. Then I need to use corners, radius 5 dp. It's good. Then I need to create another shape for the edit text. I'll name it as edit text rounded. The same way, I'll change it to shape and I'll copy these to here and I'll change this to color white. And here we go. These are our shapes that we'll use in our layout. We have two types of messages. The first type is the messages that I sent, and the second type is the messages that other people sent. So we need to create a layout that distinguishes between these two messages. I need to display my messages to the right, and I need to create and display messages that other people sent to the left of the chat activity. So for that, I'll create a new layout here in the layout folder. I'll name it as row_chat. And inside this layout, I need to create two linear layouts and control the visibility of each of these two linear layouts according to the messages that I sent or the other sent. And this is done by the Boolean that we created in the chat messages. It's called isMine. So I need to check if it is my message, then display it to the right and hide the left layout. If it is not my message, then display this message to the left and hide my right linear layout. So I want from you to focus with me because it's very important concept. Here, I need to remove this constraint layout. But at first, I need to define the layout tag and because I'm going to use the layout, the data binding. And inside this layout, I need to define this namespace and remove this constraint layout. And inside it, I'll define a data variable. It's of type chat message. And I'll start by creating a linear layout, our first linear layout. Linear layout, match parent, wrap content, and vertical. And inside this linear layout, I'll create another linear layout. I'll control the visibility of these two layouts according to the chat message is mine attribute. So if the message is my message, then I need to display a linear layout to the right. But if it is not my message, I need to display a linear layout to the left having this message. Everything is depending on the is mine attribute inside the chat message. So for that, we created this variable in order to check this condition. So I'll start using the data binding, and here I'll use chat message is mine attribute. Here is the condition, and I'll use this question mark. This is the conditional operator in many programming languages, including Java and Android development. It's also known as ternary operator. It also allows you to create a compact conditional statement. Here, if the chat message is mine, so it is my message, I need to hide this linear layout. So the first linear layout inside this linear layout will be for the other messages. And the second linear layout will be for my own messages. I need to hide this chat message linear layout, which is for the left side. To control the view's visibility, I need to import Android view and view class. The import tag is used in Android data binding to import a class so that you use this class within the XML layout file. And I'm going to use this class view. Here, I'll use this view.gun. Otherwise, we need to display this view. So here, view.visible. Again, guys, I want from you to focus with me. Chat message is mine. This is the condition that checks a property of chat message objects, specifically the is mine property. And this is used to determine if the message is sent by the current user or someone else. This is the ternary operator used for conditional operator in many programming languages, including Java and Kotlin and Android. View.gun. This is a constant value often used in Android development to indicate that a UI element should not be visible. It means that if the condition is true, so it's my own message, the view's visibility should be set to gun, effectively hiding it. The view visible, this is another constant used in Android development to indicate that the UI element should be visible. It means that if the condition is false, it's not my message, then the view's visibility should be set to visible and making it appear on the screen. And this will indicate that it is from other people. Then I'll continue with this linear layout and I'll create image view. And this SRC would be gray node, drawable gray node. This is just a small triangle for the message. And also I need to create inside this linear layout another linear layout that will contain our text and time. Here, wrap content, orientation vertical. And here, the background would be drawable, left node BG background. And inside it, I'll include another text view, wrap content, and the text would be from chat message. So I'm using data binding, chat message dot text. And I'll set the gravity to left. Then I'll include another text view for displaying the time. So outside this text view and the linear layout, I'll create another text view. I'll set it to wrap content, margin left 10 dp, it's good. And margin top 10 dp, and text would be using the data binding chat message dot convert time. And text size would be 8 sp. This is our first linear layout. So this is our layout for left messages that are not for me. I need to create another linear layout that displays the messages that I sent. So copy this whole linear layout, this code, copy it and paste it here. So we have two linear layouts, and here I need to check if it is my message, then I need to set the view to visible, and if it is not mine, I need to set it to gone. So here, this linear layout for my own messages. I'll change the gray node, I'll change it to purple, node big, and I'll move this image view under this linear layout. And I'll move this text view and set it to the first widget inside this linear layout, because I need to display time, then I need to display the message, and I need to display this purple node and the image view. Okay, back to the text view. I need to check the chat message.convert. I need to get the right node background, and here the chat message.text. Okay, so this is our layout for the chatting messages. We created this custom layout. Now we need to create a custom adapter to display these items. I'll create a new Java class inside the adapters package, and I'll name it as chat adapter. This chat adapter will extend from recyclerView.adapter class. So extends from recyclerView.adapter class. And here I need to pass the view holder. Public class binding view holder, or my view holder class extends from recyclerView.viewHolder. Now I can pass here chat adapter.myViewHolder. So always make sure that you pass your custom view holder class. Please guys, if you have any question, any doubt about recyclerView, view holders, adapters, please go back to the recyclerView sections and you will get deep details. Here I need to create private row chat binding object. This is for the row chat because I used the layout tag. I need to create a constructor having this binding, remove the item view, and here in the super I'll use the binding dot get root, and get root will return for me the view. Now I need to set the binding to bind, and this is the method. This is a setter method for the binding. Okay, so here I need to create getter and setter methods for binding. This for set binding and this for get binding. And this is our view holder class. Now the next step is to create our variables here. So I'll create a list of chat message model class, and I'll name it as chat message list. Alt plus enter to import the list, and I'll create a context object because I need to use it in the layout inflator later on. So our model and data model, or the data source, should be a list of chat message class. Here I need to create a constructor having these two, the chat and the context. And of course, I need to implement the three methods of recyclerView adapter class: on create view holder, on bind view holder, and get item count. And we talked about these in deep details in the previous videos. Here, inside this method on create view holder, we need to initialize the view holder and inflate the item layout. For that, I'll start by creating a view instance equals to layout inflator dot from context dot inflate r dot layout dot row chat. Let me import r row underscore chat, and the second parameter is parent. The third parameter is false. Again, guys, I talked about layout inflator, about these methods, about the views in many previous videos. So please go back. Row chat binding equals to data binding util dot bind the view. And then return new binding holder, my view holder, and pass the binding object. Let's move to the onBind view holder. This method binds data to an existing view holder. It populates the views in the view holder with data from the data set. For this purpose, I need to use the holder class instance get binding and set the variable here to br.chatMessage and chatList.getPosition. Also, holder.getBinding.execute pending binding. Please concentrate with me in order to understand this code. Holder.getBinding. This method is obtaining the data binding object associated with a specific view holder. In Android's recycler view, a view holder is used to represent an item in a list or a grid. Set variable method. This line sets a variable named chatMessage in the data binding object of value chatList.getPosition. br.chatMessage is generated class that contains references to the variables you've defined in your layout XML file for data binding. And in this case, it's likely that you have defined a variable with the name chatMessage in one of your XML layout files. If you go back to the row chat, you can see here the first variable is called chatMessage, and here I am setting its value, getting its key, and setting its value. Execute by pending bindings. This method call triggers the execution of pending bindings. It ensures that the data from your model, in this case chatMessage, is bound to the UI elements specified in your layout XML. In summary, this code is using data binding to update the UI of a specific item in recycler view with data from a chat list at a given position. It sets the chat message variable in the data binding object and then applies these changes to the UI by executing the pending position. Keep in mind that you should have your layout XML file properly configured with the chat messages as we done before. Additionally, make sure that the chat list contains the data you want to display in your UI and that the recycler view and data binding are set up correctly in your Android app. The last method is getItemCount. This will return the number of the variables in the list. So chat message list.size and tells Android recycler view how many items you should display. So this is our adapter, chat adapter. Now let's move to the chat activity and display the chats in our UI. Welcome back. In this video, we'll design the chat activity XML file. Open activity_chat, cut these namespaces, and remove the constraint layout. I need to use the layout tags since I'm using data binding, and here paste the namespaces. Then inside the layout tags, I need to create data variable, and inside this data variable, I'll create vModel, and its type is viewModel. Let's start with our layout. I'll create a linear layout. And inside this linear layout, I'll create a text view. Set the background for this color. I'll change the text view color to white. Then I'll create a relative layout. And inside this relative layout, I'll place my recycler view. Then I need to create this linear layout that it is a layout for the input. So under this recycler view, I need to create a linear layout. I'll give it an ID, layout_input. I'll change it to linear layout. By the way, you can use constraint layout. There is no problem by that. And inside this linear layout, I'll create two views, one button and one edit text. And increase the width to 100. And here we go. Let's go back to the chat activity.java file and initialize some variables for data binding, recycler view, adapters, and a list. Now let's move to the onCreate method and initialize these variables. I'll start with the data binding. So binding equals to data binding util dot set content view this r dot layout dot activity chat. The second thing is a view model. So my view model equals to new view model provider. And we learned about the view model providers in the previous videos. This.get, and here I need to pass an instance of the view model class. Then I need to initialize the recycler view and link it with the data binding. So binding.recycler view. Remember, we need to display this activity when the user clicks on a chat group in the groups activity. So for that, I need to get the intent that we created in the groups activity. If we open the groups activity, the view model, and in the adapter, here you can see that we need to set the group name, and we set it the group name to the click to chat group.get group name. And here we get it from the array list. So this is the key and this is the value. So for that, I need to receive this key value pairs. It's very simple. I'm using intents. So group name equals to get intent method dot get string extra. And what is the name of the key? It's the group name. This is the key. So give me the key. I'll give you the value of the clicked item. And I need to get this clicked item, this clicked group, and pass it to the view model, my view model dot get messages live data. And here I need to pass the group name. And what is the group name? It's here. Pass the group name. I'm getting the messages of the corresponding child node in the Firebase database. And since it's a live data, I need to use the observe method. Observe this, and here I need to pass Android X and the new observer. So I'm listening to the updated chat messages. Any change in the live data, this will result in getting the updated list of messages. And what we need to get from this chat messages is to update the recycler view with the new messages. For that, I need to use messages list equals to new array list and messages list dot add all and get the chat messages list. So here I'm getting the updated. This onChanged method has only one parameter, which is the chat messages of type list of chat messages that is updated to the latest updates in the chat messages. So I'm getting the live data, updated version of the chat list. User adapter or the adapter, new chat adapter, and here I'm passing the message list and the context, get application context. Don't miss, I need to use the recycler view dot set adapter method, and I'll pass my adapter, and here my adapter dot notify data set changed. When there is a new message added, I need to let the recycler view scroll automatically to this new latest message added. So for that, I need to use latest position integer equals to user adapter dot get item count -1. Here I'm getting the position of the latest item. And recycler view dot smooth scroll to position method and the latest position. Here I'm scrolling the recycler view, forcing recycler view to scroll to the latest message added. Then I'm going to use data binding dot set view model to this view model. I'm passing this variable to this data variable in the data binding. Welcome back. We need to get the message text from this edit text and send it when the user clicks on this send button to the corresponding and the correct child node in Firebase. So we need to get the message to the correct group, to the correct chatting group. For that, I want from you to focus with me because it's very tricky. Open repository. And inside the repository, I need to create a new function called send message. Public void send message. And inside this function, I need to write the algorithm that send the message to the correct chat group. For that, I need two parameters. The message, which is of type string, and the chat group. In this function, I can use the same Firebase instance, but I can't use the database reference because it's variable. It depends on the chat group child. So for that, I'll create a Firebase database reference equals to database.getReference, and inside this reference method, I need to pass my child, my chat group node. Now let's check if the message text is not null. So if message text trim equals to this, I'm using this negation operator. So if the message is not null, then I need to send it to the database reference. Chat message, I need to push object of chat message. So for that, I'll create chat message object, new chat message, and inside it, I need to pass 3 parameters. So if we go to the model chat message, we have 3 parameters: sender ID, text, and time. Is mine variable will be detected automatically according to the Firebase current user UID. The first one is the UID, so I'll get it from Firebase auth.getInstance.getCurrent UID. The second parameter is the message itself, which is passed as a parameter. And the third parameter is the timestamp. So system.currentTime in milliseconds. This is my message object. I need to push it to the database reference. But at first, we need to create an arbitrary key. So here I'll make a string random key equals to database reference dot push dot get key. Here I'm generating a random key. And last step is the reference dot child random key dot set value to the message. Here I'm generating a random key for the message, and here I'm setting the value of this key to message object. Key value pairs. Okay, it's very simple. And by the way, we learned about this in the previous videos and in the Firebase introduction. Now let's move to the view model and call this function. So view model, I'll create a new message, send message method, public void send message. In the same way as we done before, we need to pass the same parameters and the same returning type. And here I'm going to call repository.send message, the message itself, and the chat group. Again, go back to the chat activity, and here I need to handle the click events on the send button. So binding dot, and I need to define an ID here to the button. I name it as send button. Back to the chat activity, send button dot set on click listener, new view on click listener. And by the way, you can write it here by on click attribute and call the view model instance that we created before, v model dot send message. But let me test at first the chat activity, binding.send button. It's the same. Here I need to call v model or my view model dot send message. And what is the message? I need to get it from the edit text message equals to binding dot edit text chat message dot get text dot to string. The message. And what is the chat group? The chat group, we get it inside this string. So I need to pass group name. It's very simple. Now we're ready to run our application and test it and see if there is any errors. Welcome back. Now let's run our application and see if there is any error. Anonymous login. We have two chatting groups, two nodes here, family and university, family and university. So everything is working fine till now. Open the family. Oops, we have an error. Let me see in the logcat. If we scroll up, we can see that it is invalid target position. So this is happening because I'm using the smooth scroller. So back to the chat activity, and here I used the smooth scroll to position method, and this is my fault. So here is my error. I need to check if the latest position greater than 0, then I need to scroll to the position. Run again, and anonymous login, family, and here we go. This is our chat activity. I'll start typing here. Click send message, and you can see hello my friends is sent correctly. Let me see it in the real-time database. One child here, one message, and this is the random key. And by the way, we have 4 attributes. Mine, true. This is for the sender ID that starts with 4LG. Text, hello my friends, and timestamp. There are 2 errors in my layout. The text box here or the edit text is not clearing after sending the message, and this should be displayed to the right. To solve these problems, I'll go back to the chat activity, and here, after sending the message, I need to set binding dot edit text dot clear get text dot clear. Run again, and you can see I'm getting all the messages, and we cleared the edit text. So let's go to the row underscore chat. This is the linear layout, and let me scroll to here to the second linear layout, which is for my messages. And here I need to set the attribute gravity, and I put it end. Let me run again, and you can see the messages are shifted to the right. Now I need to fix the paddings. So I'll go to the right node background, and you can remove this radius, by the way. And here I need to use 4dp as padding. And let me open the left node and do the same. 4, 4, 4, and 4. Run again, and it's better now. So congratulations guys, we solved all the problems. Now let's test the other messages. I run my application on 2 different devices. This is the first device and this is the second device. Let me see on the second device. Let me click anonymous login. Let's go back to the Firebase console and let me see the authentication, and we have 2 authenticated users. Select family and let me test to send a message. Hello from different device. Send, and you can go back. You can see on the other device, it's displaying that it is mine. So this is an error. But by the way, did you see and notice how fast is Firebase to send and receive messages? It's instantaneously and real time. If we go back to the console here, we can see that mine attribute is uploaded on every single message, and this is wrong. So I need to cut this from the constructor and paste it here in the is mine, and I need to replace it with return true, checking if it is my message or not. Return it true if it is my message, matching the sender ID, this sender ID matching my current user ID. Otherwise, return false. Let me check again. And here we go. Congratulations, guys. Let me test. Click send. This is my message. Let me see on the other device, family. And here we go. It's in gray. So this is not my message. It will be displayed to the left. And this is my message on this device. It will be displayed on the right with this purple color. Congratulations, guys. We succeeded in building this amazing app, this very important application together.